Welcome to One Chapter, One Thought. I'm Pastor Chris from Lincroft Bible Church in New Jersey, and every weekday I read one chapter of the New Testament and offer one brief devotional thought. Today's reading is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of Gerasenes, and when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him any more, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart, and he broke the shackles into pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you by God, do not torment me." For he was saying to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. The herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country. The people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs. And they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. And he was getting into the boat. The man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. And he did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." And he went away and began to proclaim in Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered about him, and he was beside the sea. Then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him he fell down at his feet, and implored him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay your hand on her, so that she may be made well and live." And they went with him. And a great crowd followed him, and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a great discharge of blood for 12 years. And she had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was no better, but rather grew worse. When she heard reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." Immediately the flow of blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing all around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. They came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping." They laughed at him. But he put them all outside, and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him, and went in to where the child was. Taking her by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately the girl got up and began walking. She was 12 years of age. And they were immediately overcome with amazement. And he strictly charged them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. One thought. So far in Mark, we've seen Jesus handle storms in nature. He calms the storm at the end of chapter 4, and then he directly confronts many demons in chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. In the first part of this chapter, But how does Jesus handle human suffering and tragedy? And that's what we see kind of in the latter half of this passage. In Mark 5:21 through 43, a little bit longer passage, we see Jesus' compassion and we see his authority up close. This passage is a sandwich technique, meaning it begins and ends the same way, and then there's a kind of an interruption in the middle. So it begins and ends with the story of Jairus' daughter who is dying. So it begins with Jairus coming up to Jesus saying, my daughter is dying, I need your help. And Jesus has compassion on him and starts going towards his house. But then all of a sudden it's interrupted in the middle by this story of a hemorrhaging woman. Now, this literary technique of a sandwich, it's meant to, number one, heighten the suspense of the story, right? So you have a pretty dramatic issue confronting Jesus. Jairus' daughter is dying, and then it's like, okay, we're going towards that. We'll see how that turns out, and yet he's interrupted. Yet he's delayed now, so it heightens the suspense of the story. But also, the sandwich technique helps us understand the stories, the two stories together. They mutually interpret one another. And so what we see now then in this middle story, this story of this woman who has this bleed, this hemorrhage, it really is highlighting the nature of faith. And that's an important theme that actually comes out later in Jairus' story. But the woman, right, she highlights the nature of faith. What is faith? What does it look like? And we see first and foremost that, this woman comes to Jesus in desperation. She's fearful, right? She touches his garment. Jesus realized power's gone out of him. And he's like, who did this? And, she is afraid because obviously, like, if there's enough power in Jesus where just touching his garment heals her, then if Jesus gets angry, things might not go so great for her. So she was desperate. She moves towards Jesus. There is fear mixed in, but that still will not allow her to stop her from coming to Jesus. And then when she is with Jesus, she tells Jesus the whole truth. And Jesus reaffirms her faith and brings her healing and wholeness to her. And this woman's faith then foreshadows the desperation of Jairus, because while Jesus is tending to this woman, his daughter dies. But faith, belief, trust in Jesus leads us to hope and expectation. This is preparing for Jesus' words when he says, don't fear, only believe. And so there may be, an area of your life or many areas of life where you feel desperate. That's okay. This desperation can often be the beginning of faith. But are you willing in your desperation? Is that moving you to Jesus or to other things? This desperation by the woman moved her to Jesus. And that is the seed of faith. The seed of faith begins with saying to Jesus, I don't understand how you'll work in this. I don't understand how you're going to resolve this, but I trust you because you're my only hope. And that's the kind of faith, is the faith that saves us. It's the faith in Jesus and trusting him.